Hashtag the simple protein habit that helps protect muscle after 50. Starting around age 30, your muscles begin to shrink. Most people don't notice it at first. But by the time you hit 50, that loss accelerates, and here's what makes it urgent: you can lose up to 3 to 8% of your muscle mass per decade after 50 if nothing changes. That might not sound dramatic until you realize what muscle actually does. It's not just about looking fit. Muscle is metabolic tissue. It burns calories. It stabilizes your joints. It keeps you independent. It's literally what allows you to climb stairs, carry groceries, and live without help. And muscle loss in midlife and beyond is one of the fastest, quietest ways that independence slips away. The good news, and this is where today's habit comes in, is that research consistently suggests you can slow or even partially rebuild that muscle, even in your 60s, 70s, and beyond. But there's something most people get wrong about how to do it. They think the answer is one big protein shake, or one large chicken breast at dinner. And while that sounds simple, the evidence points to something different, something almost unglamorous in how ordinary it is: spreading your protein across your meals throughout the day, in small, consistent amounts. Let me explain why this matters, and why your body at 50 is different from your body at 25. When you're young, your muscles are highly responsive to protein. Eat a big steak at dinner, and your body efficiently uses that protein to repair and build muscle tissue. But something changes after 50. Your muscles become less sensitive to protein signals. Nutrition scientists call this anabolic resistance. Essentially, your muscles need more of a nudge to respond. It's not that protein stops working, it's that your body needs a more frequent, distributed signal throughout the day to keep muscle synthesis active. Think of it like this: if you were a plant, young muscles would thrive with one big watering once a day. But aging muscles are more like a plant that needs smaller, regular sips of water all day long to stay healthy. This is where the simple habit comes in: aiming for moderate amounts of protein, roughly 25 to 35 grams, spread across 3 or 4 eating occasions, rather than loading most of it into one meal. Studies of older adults suggest this pattern is associated with better muscle maintenance and strength than the same total amount eaten in 1 or 2 large meals. So what does this actually look like in your kitchen, on your actual plate? Let's start with breakfast. You don't need a protein powder or anything fancy. A couple of eggs, that's about 12 grams of protein, with a slice of whole grain toast and some fruit is a perfectly ordinary breakfast that now becomes part of your muscle protection strategy. Or oatmeal with a cup of Greek yogurt stirred in, maybe some berries. That's roughly 20 grams of protein, and it's something millions of people already eat. Mid-morning, a small snack. A handful of almonds, about an ounce, gives you around 6 grams of protein. Or a string cheese. Or a small pot of cottage cheese, which is criminally underrated and gives you 14 grams in just a few spoonfuls. This snack takes 90 seconds to assemble and costs almost nothing. Lunch might be a simple sandwich with some turkey or tuna, or a bowl of soup with beans and vegetables. Again, aim for that 25 to 30 gram range. Nothing complicated. Dinner, and this is key, doesn't have to be your biggest protein meal anymore. A palm-sized portion of salmon, chicken, or lean beef, alongside vegetables and a grain, gives you another 25 to 35 grams. You're not overdoing it. You're just hitting a reasonable target. And here's what makes this realistic: these are foods you probably already eat, or can easily buy at any grocery store. No special supplements required. No complicated meal prep. Just a small shift in how you think about protein distribution. Now, the mechanism: why does this actually help? Protein contains amino acids, and one in particular, leucine, is especially important for signaling your muscles to repair and grow. When you eat a moderate amount of protein, you flood your system with these amino acids. Your muscles sense that signal and activate protein synthesis, which is the process of building new muscle fiber. But here's the catch: that signal doesn't last very long in older adults. It drops off within a few hours. So by eating protein again mid-morning, and again at lunch, and again at dinner, you're sending that signal repeatedly throughout the day. Your muscles get multiple opportunities to respond, rather than one big opportunity that fades. Additionally, spreading protein intake prevents the kind of nutrient waste that can happen when you consume far more protein than your body can actually use in a single sitting. You're being efficient with what you eat. And that efficiency matters on a fixed income, or simply if you care about getting good value from your food. Research on resistance training, and this is important, shows that this protein distribution pattern works best when paired with some form of strength work. Lifting weights, resistance bands, bodyweight exercises, even a daily walk with some deliberate hill climbing. You don't need a gym. You don't need hours. But muscles need a reason to respond to that protein signal. Without some kind of mechanical stress on the muscle, even perfect protein distribution will only slow the loss, not necessarily rebuild it. The two work together. So let me be clear about what this habit will and won't do. This approach may help preserve muscle mass, and research suggests it's associated with maintaining strength and independence as you age. It's not a cure for sarcopenia, which is the clinical term for age-related muscle loss. It's not going to reverse years of inactivity overnight. But for someone willing to eat a modest amount of protein throughout the day and do some resistance work, even light resistance work, the evidence suggests it's one of the most evidence-backed, straightforward things you can do to protect your physical independence over the next decade. There are a few caveats. If you have kidney disease, your doctor may have specific protein recommendations for you, and you should follow those, not this general guidance. If you're taking certain medications, or have other health conditions, protein intake might interact in ways worth discussing with your doctor. This is general educational information, not medical advice tailored to you. Your own situation is unique, and if you have questions about how much protein is right for your body, it's absolutely worth a quick conversation with your physician or a registered dietitian. Here's what we know: muscle loss after 50 is real and it's common, but it's not inevitable. A simple habit, spreading protein across your meals in modest, consistent amounts, paired with some kind of regular strength work, is associated with better outcomes for muscle health, strength, and the independence that comes with it. It costs almost nothing. It requires no special knowledge. And it's backed by research done on people exactly like you. If this was useful, subscribe. We release one small, science-backed change each week. Nothing extreme, nothing sold, just honest information about living well after 50. Now, I want to go deeper into something that surprised many of the researchers who studied this. When they looked at the actual muscle biopsies, tissue samples taken from older adults before and after adopting this distributed protein pattern, they found something interesting. It wasn't just that muscle stayed the same. In some cases, particularly when combined with even light resistance work, there were signs of new muscle protein being laid down. The muscle fibers themselves were responding. But here's what was striking: it happened gradually, quietly, over weeks and months. There was no sudden transformation. No before and after photo moment. Just a slow, steady signal being sent to muscle tissue, day after day, that said, "We need you. Keep working. Stay." This matters because a lot of the mythology around muscle building at any age comes from young bodybuilders and fitness influencers showing dramatic results over weeks. But your body at 55 or 65 or 75 doesn't work on that timeline. It works on consistency. It works on patience. And that's actually liberating, because it means you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be regular. Let me walk you through what a realistic day might look like for someone who's genuinely trying this approach, because the gap between theory and practice is where most people stumble. Sarah is 58. She works in an office. She's not particularly athletic, never has been. But she noticed last year that carrying grocery bags up the stairs left her winded, and her knees started to hurt more. Her doctor didn't find anything wrong, but suggested she think about strengthening work. So she decided to try this protein distribution thing, and here's what actually happened. Her alarm goes off at 6 a.m. She doesn't have time for an elaborate breakfast. But she scrambles 2 eggs, drops them on a piece of whole wheat toast with a little butter, and eats it standing up with a cup of coffee. 12 grams of protein. 7 minutes of her morning. She gets to work around 8 a.m. At 10:30, when the mid-morning slump hits, that dull moment when focus drops, she reaches into her desk drawer for a small bag of mixed nuts she prepared on Sunday. A handful. About an ounce. 6 grams of protein. It costs her $1.50 and takes her 30 seconds. Lunch she usually brings from home. Today it's leftover chicken and rice with roasted broccoli. She measured it out roughly, a piece of chicken about the size of her palm, maybe the thickness of a deck of cards. That's around 30 grams of protein. She eats it at her desk or takes a walk to the park if weather permits. The walk is good not because it's intense, but because it's something. Movement. Muscle engagement. Around 4 p.m., she feels a little tired. She makes a cup of tea and eats a small container of plain Greek yogurt with a drizzle of honey. 14 grams of protein. A small, genuine break in her workday. Dinner is simpler than she used to make it. She's learned that she doesn't need to cook elaborate meals to hit her targets. Tonight it's a salmon fillet, roughly 4 ounces, which sounds small but is actually quite satisfying, with sweet potato and green beans. The salmon alone gives her about 25 grams of protein. She's done with the day's eating around 7 p.m. Total protein, roughly 87 grams. Total effort, minimal. Total cost, maybe $12 to $14 for the whole day, and that's not being frugal, that's just ordinary grocery shopping. Now, 3 times a week, Sarah does something she never did before. She goes to a community center where they have a gentle strength class. It's not intense. It's not CrossFit. It's a 1-hour class with a certified instructor where people her age, and older, do resistance band work, light dumbbells, and bodyweight exercises. She follows along, modifies where she needs to, and honestly, she gets a little social interaction out of it too. Her gym pass costs $30 a month. After 3 months, she didn't see dramatic changes in the mirror. But she noticed she could carry 2 grocery bags up the stairs without stopping. Her knees still have some discomfort, but it's less. And when she stood up from sitting, it felt easier. Less creaky. Less like she was fighting her own body. This is what actually happens when people do this. Not transformation. Not youth restored. But functionality preserved and, in many cases, incrementally improved. The research backs this up. Studies tracking older adults over 6 months to a year with this kind of approach, consistent protein distribution plus regular resistance work, show measurable improvements in grip strength, walking speed, and ability to rise from a chair. These might sound like small things, but they're the exact things that determine whether you can live independently at 75, or whether you need help. There's another mechanism worth understanding, one that often gets overlooked in the popular conversation about protein. It's about nitrogen balance. Your muscles are made of protein, and protein contains nitrogen. When you eat protein, your body either uses that nitrogen to build and repair tissue, or it excretes it. But here's the thing, after 50, your body becomes slightly less efficient at retaining nitrogen. You lose a little more in urine and sweat than you used to. This is another reason that consistent, moderate protein intake throughout the day matters more than periodic large doses. You're maintaining a steady supply of raw materials for muscle maintenance, which counteracts that age-related loss of efficiency. Additionally, and this is something many people don't realize, the timing of protein relative to your resistance work matters somewhat, but not as much as the total amount across the day. You don't need to drink a protein shake immediately after a workout. That's marketing. What matters is that you've eaten enough protein throughout the day, and you've done the resistance work. Your body will use that protein to repair and adapt muscle tissue over the next 24 to 48 hours. So there's no rush. No special window. Just consistency. Let me also address something practical that comes up a lot. What if you don't like eggs? What if you're vegetarian? What if you have a tight budget? Eggs are cheap and versatile, but they're not the only way. If you hate them, don't eat them. You can get similar protein and nutrition from a bowl of Greek yogurt, or a cup of cottage cheese, or a handful of legumes, black beans, lentils, chickpeas, which also give you fiber, which has its own benefits for digestive health and blood sugar stability. You can get protein from canned fish like tuna or sardines, which are inexpensive, shelf-stable, and give you omega-3 fatty acids as a bonus. You can get protein from cheese, from nuts, from whole grains like quinoa, from milk, from tofu if you eat soy products. The point is, you don't need an expensive diet to do this. You need awareness and a little planning. Shop the parts of the grocery store where whole foods live, the produce section, the meat and fish counter, the dairy aisle, the bulk bins. Skip the middle aisles with processed convenience foods if you can. You'll spend less money and eat better. On a tight budget, eggs, canned fish, dried beans, plain yogurt, and milk are genuinely the cheapest sources of protein available. A dozen eggs might cost $3. Canned tuna in water, maybe $1 a can. A pound of dried beans, which makes 4 or 5 meals, costs less than $2. These aren't exotic or trendy. They're the foundation of how working people have eaten for decades. Now, there's one more thing I want to touch on, because it matters, the relationship between this habit and your overall health, beyond just muscle. When researchers study people who eat moderate amounts of protein distributed across the day, they often see secondary benefits. Blood sugar tends to be more stable. Appetite tends to be better controlled. People feel less hunger in the evening, which can help with weight management. There's also some evidence, not definitive, but suggestive, that consistent protein intake is associated with better bone health. Your bones, like your muscles, are living tissue that responds to the signals your body sends. Protein is one of the building blocks of bone. So when you're protecting muscle through adequate protein, you're likely doing something good for bone density too. The relationship between muscle and metabolism is also worth mentioning. Every pound of muscle tissue you preserve or build burns a small amount of calories at rest, just to exist. When you lose muscle, your resting metabolism slows. This is one reason that weight tends to creep up as you age, even if you're eating the same amount. But when you maintain muscle through adequate protein and resistance work, you're partially counteracting that metabolic slowdown. You're not going to build huge muscles in your 50s or 60s, and you're not trying to. You're just preserving the muscle you have, which helps preserve the metabolism you have. There's also something psychological that happens, though it's harder to measure in a lab. When someone realizes they can influence their own physical capacity, that they're not just passively declining, but can actually do something about it, something shifts in how they experience aging. They feel less helpless. They feel more agency. And that mental shift, that sense of control, is associated with better overall health outcomes, better mood, less depression. This isn't woo. This is documented in research on aging and self-efficacy. So when we talk about a simple protein habit, we're really talking about something bigger than just muscle protein synthesis and amino acid signals. We're talking about a practice that touches metabolism, bone health, mood, independence, and how you experience your own aging body. The last thing I want to address is the question of supplements. Do you need a protein powder? Do you need amino acid supplements? Do you need anything beyond food? The honest answer is no. Food is more than adequate. A whole egg has not just protein, but choline, which is important for brain health. A piece of salmon has protein, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, and selenium. A cup of lentils has protein, fiber, iron, and polyphenol, which are plant compounds associated with reduced inflammation. A piece of cheese has protein, calcium, and fat-soluble vitamins. When you eat whole foods, you're getting protein bundled with dozens of other nutrients that your body needs. A protein powder is convenient if you're in a pinch, or traveling, or genuinely can't eat solid food for some reason. But for most people, most of the time, food is better. It's more satisfying. It's cheaper. It has more nutritional complexity. If you do choose to use a protein powder occasionally, They're safe for most people and can be useful. But they're not necessary, and they're not better than food in any meaningful way. The people who do best with this approach are the ones who view it as normal eating, not as a special diet or a fitness regimen. All of this circles back to one core idea: aging is not a disease. Muscle loss is not inevitable. And the intervention that helps, consistent, modest protein intake throughout the day, paired with regular movement and some resistance work, is accessible to almost everyone, costs very little, requires no special knowledge, and is backed by solid research. If this was useful,